So joining me now is Republican Arizona congressional candidate and former NFL kicker Jay Feely and talk show host Mark Davis right here in Dallas. Good to see you both.
Good to be here.
Jay, you're running for Congress. What do you think about the new head of the DHS?
I think it was a great pick. You had to have somebody who would stabilize this organization. He's a no BS kind of guy. You know, he's a guy who cares about safe borders, safe communities. He's going to do what it takes to make sure that we get rid of illegals. And, you know, when you look at the hypocrisy that exists between the left and the right and how they've dealt with this, everything that the Trump administration is doing are the same things that the Obama administration did. You know, they deported 3 million. They had 80% without due process. They had a greater percentage of Americans detained than the Trump administration has. So it's just hypocritical. I'm glad that we have somebody who's going to step in there who has both legislative experience, 10 years legislative experience, and then business experience as well. And he can bring that to that organization and hopefully give it stability.
Mark, Mullen is no stranger to this program or the digital show Will Cain Country. We've had a lot of conversations. I know him well. Know his positions on immigration, but there are some questions out there on the right about his position and how hawkish he will be on immigration.
There were, and doing talk shows for a living, I get all those conservative critics who said, yeah, wait a minute, was he particularly as hardline as he needed to be about ending refugee funding programs, and how does he really feel about sanctuary cities? The good news is he's in the cabinet now, and none of his personal feelings matter anymore at all. You will immediately, as previous cabinet secretaries have learned, you will mold your thoughts, and so they comport perfectly with the president of the United States. He will be every bit as hawkish as President Trump needs him to be.
You know, it's interesting. I'd ask you this, Jay. You're the one running for Congress. If you ask the American people how they feel about illegal immigration, they almost overwhelmingly support deportation of illegals, regardless of their criminal status, meaning their criminal records. If you're here in the country illegally, you should be deported. But when they see it play out on the streets, they seem to have a different reaction. And the question will be, how does that play in the midterms? How does it play deportations? How does it play a crackdown on illegal immigration?
Yeah, and I think it's important to know that you can be ardently against illegal immigration while still loving immigrants. You know, I think as a conservative movement, we have to make sure that we make that point over and over. But what they're trying to do first and foremost is get rid of those violent criminals. And the fact that the left in those sanctuary cities and states is willing to put them back into society and risk something happening to an American citizen that we've seen so many times. You know, we just saw it the other day in Illinois, and an 18-year-old gets killed because that state didn't have the will to say, hey, yes, we have somebody that you want in our jails that's a violent criminal. Here he is, and deport him. And that shouldn't be a partisan issue. And yet it is, because the Democrats want to make it a partisan issue.
You know, on that note, Mark, I would go even further. And I've had this conversation on this show. This is what we're talking about this week, this murder, sadly, of this young lady by an illegal immigrant in Chicago. But 2 weeks ago, we were talking about naturalized, legalized citizens committing acts of terror. 4 of them in 2 weeks, one of them right here in Austin, Texas. And there needs to be real conversations about whether or not denaturalization.
Absolutely. Of course.
Oh, interesting to hear that as well.
We'll have at least one member of Congress.
Yeah, there we go.
Right. And you're right, because you never know exactly how, because people, and you framed it exactly right, and Jay knows this as well as anybody, that you can have people say, can respond, it's one of those 80-20 issues. We want to crack down on immigration. But then when they see what it looks like, which means occasionally there's a raid, occasionally we're dragging somebody out of the Home Depot break room, occasionally there'll be some things that are a little hard on the eye, and then everybody gets wobbly. Not everybody. Some people get wobbly. Some people get soft. It was the optics of Minnesota. That's why Markwayne Mullen is the DHS secretary now. We needed a kind of a change in the way this whole operation looked. I still believe, I think Jay does too, well, we all do, that the overall goal, the mass deportations, the getting serious, the worst of the worst, that those goals will remain.
I got to be honest, Jay, I'm pleasantly surprised to hear you're absolutely. It's a moderate position, but if the Democrats aren't even willing to deport violent criminals, I mean, who's going to talk? How are they ever going to be a participant in having a conversation about whether or not somebody should be denaturalized? In the case of Old Dominion, when a guy literally had been plotting terror.
That's right. And it's a privilege, not a right, to be a citizen of this country. And when you come here through an asylum program, or you come here and you become a citizen, you should not only want to assimilate, but you should want to be a boon to this society. And you look at Minnesota, and you look at the Somali population, 10 years after they've been here, 80% of them are on welfare. That is not the way this system was designed. It can't function that way. It can't sustain itself that way. And we need, this position, by the way, is the same position that you go back 15 years, 10 years, all the Democrats were saying that. Hillary Clinton said that. Obama said that. They all said you have to come here, you have to assimilate, you have to wait in line, you have to do it legally. And if you came here illegally, you should be deported, and then you should come back the legal way. Now they've changed their minds because they lost to President Trump in 2016.
Yeah. Really quickly, this weekend, Mark, in Minnesota, there's another No Kings rally. This one featuring Bruce Springsteen.
Bruce Springsteen and Bernie Sanders and Jane Fonda. It's the trifecta of nonsense. I guarantee you clips from that event will help your show, might help Jay's campaign, will help my talk show. Clips from No Kings in Minnesota will benefit all of us.
Is it sponsored by Depends?
We actually know who it's sponsored by. We're going to be doing some deep dives on that.
Good.
Neville Roy Singham, a man who lives in Shanghai, American citizen in connection with the CCP, funding most of these protests.
Shocker.
They're not organic. They're all funded.
That's exactly right. Jay Feely, Mark Davis, great to have you on the show. Thank you, guys.